the next time we see you, we'll break time.
This thing is a Baptist church, so you ain't got to sit back here because we're not passing the collection plate. Act like you like each other. Look at it, front row. Y'all must be a bunch of sinners. Front row. So come on up, we're going to have a good time tonight. All right? You're going to slash this.
Take shots and make it look more full than it is.
Yes, sir. You may have missed your calling.
The LNRA police chief's here too,
Okay.
so he's going to help us with making sure Alan's good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Allen West meet and greet. We have a couple county officials here. One is Monica Foster. She is access director. And we also have our Jackson County Judge, Jill Farm. Mr. West will sit here a little bit, and then we'll get question and answer session. I'll put my mic back there to my hand. Try to keep it about a minute for your question and then give it a good answer. Again, thank you for being here, and if you don't mind, at this point, would you rise and do
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, once again, we come before your throne of grace. Lord, we welcome your presence here tonight. We thank you for bringing Allen West here to speak to us. We pray that everything said and done here tonight will be done to glorify you. Lord, we pray for those that are en route. May you give them grace to travel. Lord God, please bless our nation and bless the great state of Texas. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all for coming out here tonight. Lieutenant Colonel Allen D. West is a Christian constitutional conservative, author of several books, including one called Hold Texas, Hold the Nation, former member of the U.S. Congress, former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, combat veteran, and occasional Fox News contributor. Among the many military awards and decorations for Lieutenant Colonel West are the Bronze Star and the Meritorious Service Medal with 3 oak-leaf clusters. Colonel West's life has been defined as one of service, sacrifice, and commitment to this republic, the United States of America. He believes that it is the conservative, free-market policies and non-politics that secure a sound economic future for Americans. Allen West has a bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and 2 master's degrees, one from Kansas State University and another from the U.S. Army Command and the General Staff Officers College. He is married to Dr. Angela Graham West, a financial advisor and and they have 2 daughters, Aubrey, a board-certified physician's assistant, and Austin, a nursing assistant. He is also a proud grandfather to 1 grandson, Jackson. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for Allen West.
That's awesome. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay. All right, let's see what we can do here and square this place away a little bit. I'm going to move this over here to the side, and I'm going to take this and push it a little bit back. There, so I can see everybody and be, one with you. Hey, look, what a pleasure and an honor that you would take time out of your busy schedules to come out here and allow me to share some thoughts, perspectives, and insights. And some of you that have never, had the opportunity to be with me and I've never seen you before, we can get to know each other. And I will tell you, I'm glad that there's no World Series game tonight because I'd be here by myself. And I just want y'all to know, before y'all get in my face, I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So see, I want to bring out the naysayers. But look, I think it's going to be a great series. And the thing that I like about this World Series, remember when the Major League Baseball decided they were going to punish the state of Georgia and they took the All-Star game away and they sent it out to Denver? Well, guess what? The Braves are in the World Series, and so we just had about 3 different games, not just one game. And the other thing is that you have 2 red states in the World Series, instead of us sitting around watching Los Angeles and Boston, Massachusetts. So I think it's a great thing that we are showcasing our 2 great states, the state that I was born and raised in, and the state that I decided that this is my home and will be my home for the rest of my life. So thank you so much. And as Judge Jill, again, 7 February 1961, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I was born at Hugh Spalding Hospital. And in 1961, Hugh Spalding Hospital was a blacks-only hospital. I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, in the old 4th Ward neighborhood. It was the exact same neighborhood that produced Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As a matter of fact, my elementary school was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. I had 2 great parents. My dad, who was born in South Alabama, he got smart, jumped the Chattahoochee River and grew up in South Georgia. And my mom, who also was born and raised in South Georgia. My dad was a World War II veteran, a corporal in the United States Army when the Army was segregated. And my dad was not seen as equal to many other people. My mom was born and raised in Peach County. I mean, you can't get more Georgia than be born and raised in Peach County, Fort Valley, Georgia. She went to Fort Valley State College. And they moved up there to Atlanta, Georgia in 1959, and that's where I was raised. As Jill said, I went to the University of Tennessee. And so when people talk about, hey, Colonel, why do you care so much and why do you love Texas so much? Well, just always remember that liberty and death flag the Texans are so proud of, there was a little girl from Macon, Georgia that made that flag. And the Georgia Volunteers brought it out here to Texas. Not too far away from here is a place called La Bahia, Goliad. The commander of those Texians, James Fannin, who was massacred with the rest of his troops, James Fannin was originally from Georgia. The very first vice president of the Republic of Texas, and later on became a president of the Republic of Texas, was a guy by the name of Mirabeau Lamar. Lamar University is named after him. He was born and raised in Georgia. So there's an incredible bond. Of course, you all know about the bond between the state of Tennessee, where we have a very unique nickname for our university. And it's because of all those volunteers that came here. When you go down to the Alamo and you stand there at the cenotaph and you read the names of those 183 that gave their lives so we can be here today in the Lone Star State, 38 of them, the most, were from the state of Tennessee. As a matter of fact, I share a little something with another former member of the United States House of Representatives, who history teaches us was the last person to lose their life at the Alamo. Of course, y'all know that is Davy Crockett, who famously said when he lost congressional re-election, "May you all go to hell, I'm going to Texas." And so Texas is very special. Texas is very important to me. I remember the first time sitting with my dad in the living room, and watching that movie with John Wayne, Lawrence Harvey, Richard Widmark, called The Alamo. And it was just amazing for me to see the story of men who would stand, even though they knew what the outcome would be, but they understood that service, sacrifice, and commitment, and honor, and integrity, and character are very important. And I want to see that being restored here in the Lone Star State. Because there are challenges that we have in this state. And the progressive socialist left understands something. That's why I wrote the book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation. They understand that they will never be able to control the United States of America unless they get a control of Texas. And when you look at what is happening in this state, up where I live in Dallas County, you travel down I-35 in Travis County, you continue on down I-35 in Bexar County, you jump over there off of I-10 in Harris County, you go out west to El Paso County, we've got challenges here. Those 5 metropolitan areas, major population centers, are critical. Why? Because there were 5 metropolitan urban areas in Georgia that came out to vote, and now Georgia has 2 avowed socialists as senators. Those 5 areas, Atlanta metropolitan area, Macon, Ma'am, Columbus, where your mother and father are from, Augusta, and Savannah. Your name, Savannah. And we cannot allow the exact same thing to happen here in the state of Texas. You know, I spent 22 years in the United States Army, retired at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. As a matter of fact, this gentleman back here who is a Vietnam veteran, he and I share a little history. He served in combat with the 4th Infantry Division, and I commanded a battalion in combat in the 4th Infantry Division in 2003. Deployed out of Fort Hood, Texas. That was my last duty assignment. And of course, if you're a very smart military guy that's been dragging your wife and your family around all over for all those years, you turn to your wife and you ask her one question: where do you want to go when we retire? And so my wife, who's a brilliant woman with an MBA and a PhD, when we met, she was a professor of business, marketing, and finance at Kansas State University when I was just a stupid little captain. My dad told me not just marry pretty, but marry smart. And I tried to do that. But she got a great offer from Raymond James down in South Florida. She's originally from Jamaica, and that's why we moved down there. And we were there for 10 years, and I got the honor of being able to run for Congress and represent Florida's 22nd Congressional District, which is along the southeast coast from Fort Lauderdale all the way up to Jupiter Inlet. I want you to think about something. In 1961, I'm born in a blacks-only hospital. And my dad served in a segregated army. My older brother served in Vietnam. He was a Marine. Everybody's got a black sheep in the family, and that was my older brother. But he was a combat infantryman wounded at a place called Khe Sanh. And at the age of 15, my dad challenges me to be the first officer in the family because he was a corporal, my older brother was a lance corporal. And I get to command a battalion of 600 in one of the most historic divisions in the United States Army, the 4th Infantry Division. I get to run for and become a congressman in the United States of America out of the state of Florida and represent a congressional district that when I was 50 years of when I was born, blacks could not go on Fort Lauderdale Beach. They could not go to Palm Beach Island. But on my 50th birthday, I was the congressional representative for them. There was a little bitty house that was in the congressional district that I represented. That house was called Mar-a-Lago. I've sat down with the man who would go on to become president of the United States of America on so many occasions and had events with him in Mar-a-Lago. Been in his office in Trump Tower. There was a man that I got to sit down with not once, not twice, but 3 times to have one-on-one dinner with on Palm Beach Island. A conservative icon, that's what they call him. His name was Rush Limbaugh. How is it that a kid born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, in a blacks-only hospital can grow up and achieve these things, can grow up and become your state party chairman, and now in a position to run for governor of the largest red state in the United States of America? See, the message that we have to send is that Texas and America is not about making victims The left wants victims because they need people to be dependent upon them, because that's how you have power control. But our message is that we make victors. So a kid from the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, born in a blacks-only hospital, is standing on stage before you all here today. So some people say, well, Colonel, why would you step down from being the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas to step up? Because I do see it as a step up, to run to be governor. Because as chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, I can advocate for the things that you want, like the legislative priorities, like the Republican Party platform. But when you have people that are in Austin, Texas, that just kind of gives you the shoo, go over there, sit in the corner. See, I find that condescending. I find that offensive. When you are the ones that are out there busting your tail in the hot summer days, knocking on doors, making phone calls to make sure that we have a Republican majority in the Texas State House, a Republican majority in the Texas State Senate, statewide Republican leadership. But when it comes time standing up for what you believe in, those principles and values that are codified in the platform of the Republican Party of Texas, they say no. Which is why we have not stopped taxpayer-funded lobbying. Which is why we can't get school choice passed. Which is why we could not get anything passed to protect our monuments and our historical markers here in the state of Texas. Let me tell you how important that is. This past summer, 3 Texans wrote a book, came out in June. It was called Forgetting the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth. It's happening in Texas. And so we don't protect those things that are unique to us, then what history will our children and grandchildren end up learning? The fact that we are here in Texas, and we are chemically and physically castrating children. We're giving children hormonal therapies and puberty blockers. And there are some children that are going to clinics in the state of Texas that are having healthy body parts removed. And you all said, this is one of our priorities, but yet it is not. When people have a special session, they say, okay, we'll give you $175 on property tax relief. This is, you see the tax assessor just start laughing. She knows how insidious that is. But again, you got to understand, where is our true reform for the property tax system that we have here that is the 6th highest in the country? And really, when you study and understand it, it's based upon the principles and the philosophies of Karl Marx. You got to step up and do something different. You know, I had a lady come up to me before, we got started here. And she said, I'm coming out. I've never seen you in person, never heard from you. But here's my question I want to know. Said, are you have other ambitions? No. I got one ambition, which is why in 2018 I wrote that book, Hold Texas, Hold the Nation. The fight for America, for its future and its legacy, is right here. You're on the front lines. You're the tip of the spear. The rest of the nation is looking to us and what we do here in Texas. And warriors, soldiers, as you know, we move to the sound of the guns. We don't run away from the artillery. We don't run away from the gunfire. We run towards it. And I want to be in a position to protect the sovereignty and the legacy of the state of Texas. Because everything that I see happening right now, this was predictable. It was intentional. It is purposeful. And you all here in Jackson County and Victoria County, everybody along these communities of Highway 59, you're under and live along one of the major avenues of approach that goes to a city that is either number 1 or number 2 in the country for sex trafficking. The other city is up by where I live, and that's Dallas. We are talking about a state, Texas, that we found out last week that there are airplanes taking off out of our state with illegal immigrant minor children, landing in New York, landing in Florida, landing previous to that in Tennessee. So we are actually aiding and abetting, we're enabling human trafficking by not stopping and securing what's going on at our border. Last week, I was down there on the border with the sheriff of Kenny County, Sheriff Bracketville. Maybe some of y'all know where that is. Just east of Val Verde County and Del Rio. And see, what the military taught me is that if you really want to know what's going on, you don't go out in the middle of the day. Am I right, Bill? You don't go out when the general comes down or your superior officer comes down and you walk them around to the places that you want to show them. If you really want to know what's going on, you go out in the middle of the night. That's when the cockroaches come out. That's when the bad guys come out. And so I'm standing there with Sheriff Bradco from 11:30 to 2 a.m. in the morning last Wednesday night. First of all, let me get you to understand something. Kenny County is 1,400 square miles. Sheriff Coe has 6 sheriff's deputies to cover 1,400 square miles. And oh, by the way, 16 miles of Kenny County run along the Rio Grande. The DPS, they're in the cars on Highway 90 or Highway 277. Border Patrol, they're right there with their trucks, their vehicles, right off the side of the road. So what did I tell Sheriff Kenny? Let's get off the road. Let's go into the bushes. Sheriff Cole looked at me like, are you serious? I said, absolutely, I'm packing, I'm good, okay? So we go out there into the bushes. We stand on a little piece of high ground. You know what I see? Nothing. No National Guard, no DPS, no Border Patrol, nobody. And if you're serious about securing your border, you don't sit back on the road. You get out there on the ground and you control that area. That's what we're not doing here in Texas. We're trying to put a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. And if you don't understand the intent of the Biden administration, it is to undermine the sovereignty of the state of Texas. It is to undermine this constitutional republic. It is to undermine our representative democracy. And the thing is, when you study and understand the Constitution, that's what the federal government is supposed to do. It says it. Protect every state in the union from invasion. They ain't doing it. So what does the Constitution say? What states can do if actually invaded when there's imminent danger without any admit of delay. So we don't need to sit around and twiddle our thumbs. If I'm your governor, we put 5,000 to 7,000 of our National Guard troops on that border. We got 26,000 in the Texas Military Department. In Article 4, Section 7 of the Texas State Constitution, one of the duties and responsibilities of the governor of Texas as the commander of the Texas Military Department is to repel invasions. Clear as all day. That's the power that we have as a sovereign state. That's the power that the 10th Amendment of the Constitution gives us. That's the power that Thomas Jefferson wrote about in the Declaration of Independence when he said free and independent states created the United States of America, not the other way around. But if we don't take the steps to put our boots on the ground and repel this invasion and show that we're serious about deterring this, if we don't put our boots on the ground to interdict these infiltration routes that are coming on, and we know the infiltration routes because we see the patterns. If we don't look at the cartels and stop thinking that the cartels are just some guys in a business organization and realize that they are a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization. The cartels are no different from the Taliban. They are fighting an insurgency against us. They are non-state, non-uniform belligerents, and they're conducting combat operations against the state of Texas. Why do I say that? They're firing across the border. International law says that when you fire across the international boundary or border of a nation or a state that has 1,254 miles, that's an act of war. Where's our response? And oh, by the way, I've been on the receiving end of an AK-47, a PKM, an RPG, and we're telling our National Guard troops that if people are firing at you, you don't fire back. See, that comes from a person who's never been in combat. Because if you don't shoot back when you're being fired upon, first of all, you embolden the other side. And sooner or later, some young man or woman that wears the uniform of the Texas National Guard is going to lose their life. You got to stop that. The drug trafficking crisis. I find it insidious that we're sitting here and we got Texans that are facing the potential of losing their job right as we enter into the holiday season if they don't get a jab in the arm. But yet 100, 200,000 have come across that border and no one has told them to get a shot in the arm. We are facing a constitutional crisis, and Texas needs to step up. When you think about these non-governmental organizations, because the Border Patrol is not doing anything with illegal immigrants, ICE is not deporting them, these non-governmental organizations are the ones with taxpayer-funded money that are basically the travel agencies for illegal immigrants. They're the ones putting them on buses. They're the ones putting them on airplanes. And oh, by the way, these airplanes are taking off from military bases, like Laughlin Air Base or Fort Bliss, Texas. That's not what military bases are supposed to be doing, aiding and abetting illegal immigration and human trafficking. So here in Texas, we just revoked the licenses of these non-governmental organizations to be able to operate in Texas. They're a 501c3. 501c3s have to get permission to operate in a state. Take it away from them. And if they continue to try to do what they're doing right now, it's a felony offense. That's how you send the clear message. Remittances of illegal immigrants. In the state of Oklahoma, they tax remittances that are sent back by illegals to Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala. They tax them at 1%. I tend to believe, even though the football game didn't reflect that, but I tend to believe that Texas is 10 times better than Oklahoma. So why don't we tax it at 10%? And guess what we do when we tax it at 10%? That money goes back into our border security fund. Just the same as when we designate the cartels a terrorist organization, we freeze their assets, we seize their assets, and we use it for our own border security fund. That's the center of the gravity. It's the money. There are so many things we can talk about. The medical freedom is important because if you lose control of your body, what do you have control over? The educational freedom is so important. These ladies here, freedom over fear. Mothers stepping up, going and confronting these school board members to make sure that their children are being educated, not indoctrinated. That's so important. But understand this. If you don't protect the sovereignty of the state of Texas, then it's Katie bar the door. Let me close and leave you with this thought before I start taking your questions. How many people here have read H.R. 1? Basically, the nationalization of elections here in the United States of America. You got to read these things. You got to understand the strategic perspective of the other side. What does H.R. 1 say? There's no picture ID to vote in the United States of America. H.R. 1 says there's no voter registration roll review in the United States of America. H.R. 1 says that mail-in, unsolicited mail-in ballots, not absentee ballots, completely different, but unsolicited mail-in ballots are going to be the standard by how we vote in the United States of America. Online voter registration, same-day voter registration, same-day voting. And you know what? The other critical point that H.R. 1 says, illegal immigrants get the right to vote in the United States of America. By the end of this year, this calendar year, we're looking at 2 million illegal immigrants have come into this country and now being dispersed. And oh, by the way, they've been told that they'll get $450,000 of taxpayer money, up to $1 million taxpayer money for breaking our law. And so we tried to verify if they were a family unit. Now we're going to give them $450,000. That's absolutely just unconscionable. But if we're not careful, and remember, the city of Dallas is about 1.7 million. So basically, what is coming to the United States of America is more than the population of the city of Dallas. This is a grand design. Texas cannot be the welcoming mat for the destruction of the sovereignty of the United States of America. That's what I want to ensure. That's what I want to make sure does not happen. That's why I'm seeking to be the governor of this great state. Because now is a time we have to take bold action. especially when we have an unconstitutional and lawless administration that for whatever reason is seeking the demise of this great state and this great nation. I'm sure Governor Abbott's a nice guy. But let me tell you something. When you're in combat, combat ain't about nice guys. Combat is about understanding you got an enemy. And every day the enemy is waking up with this mindset. I got to kill them. And you've got to wake up with a mindset that says, I've got to destroy them before they do that to me. And if we don't have that right type of mindset, the cartels, the radical Islamic jihadists, intel assessment 6 months before ISIS hits the United States of America. That's why what happened in Afghanistan is so important for us here. Because as long as we have open borders like we have, jihadists are going to work with the cartels because they're of the same cloak, and they're going to get here in Texas. 52 were just found in Panama on the terrorist watch list. In Panama, they caught 52. I guarantee you, there's probably another 200 that are still embedded in that group. Now is our time to step up, ladies and gentlemen. Now is our time to protect Texas for the future of our children and grandchildren. Now it's time to make sure that your voices are heard, not the voices of lobbyists in Austin who could prevent us from having proper tax relief. Now's the time for us to step up and make sure that in February, we are never freezing in our homes again. I find it absolutely sad that in February, an 11-year-old boy in Conroe, Texas, froze to death in the bed in his home. Imagine being a parent and putting blanket upon blanket upon blanket on your child, and you couldn't save them. But yet, there are companies here in the state of Texas that made money and profits while we were freezing. Companies that are writing campaign contribution checks to people that sit in leadership positions in Austin, Texas. If that's what you want, then it will be, as Thomas Jefferson once said, sometimes you get the government that you want, other times you get the government that you deserve. So we can come out to events like this, but here's your call to action. As I shared this with the folks in Corpus Christi. Tonight, read the entire Declaration of Independence. It don't take long. But read the entire Declaration of Independence and see the grievances and the usurpations that Thomas Jefferson listed against King George III. The exact same things happening right now in the United States of America. Because one person once said that those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And this is where we are today. But I ain't going to let it happen here in the great state of Texas. So God bless you all. What are your questions? All right, here we go. First victim. Oh, come on, Bueller? Anyone?
Well, can you go so everyone can hear you? Yes, ma'am, you gotta go through the microphone so everyone can. Line up.
Okay, first of all, thank you for coming tonight.
No, I had to come. You did not have to come, so I thank you for being here.
And also thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
It's a great state of our nation. I took an opportunity to watch your individual debate that you were and I listened to what you said and also to what you said this week. And I was, sorry, can you not hear me? I can hear myself, sorry. So, you mentioned this evening as well as in your debate in here, but it goes with less vacation. What is your plan for property tax reform?
Oh, I laid out the plan for property tax reform. Here it is. First and foremost, we've got to understand that property tax is, like I said, part of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. Two things about that: progressive tax system and also the elimination of private property. So we should now have a tax system in Texas that is based upon Marxism. So first thing is this: we need to look at how we can codify into law, which is what I talked about, 70, 80, 90% of a budget surplus that comes out of a budget cycle, and have that dedicated toward the maintenance and operations fund of the independent school district so we can pay that down. That's at the state level, the immediate tax relief that you can get. There are things at the, the city or the municipal and the county level I can't touch. That's something you have to deal with your county judge, your tax assessor. Then the other thing that we need to do is I once sat on this commission called the Sunset Advisory Commission. Anybody heard of the Sunset Advisory Commission? The Sunset Advisory Commission, every year after a legislative session, they are charged to look at agencies and programs that are supposed to be what? Sunsetted. What does that mean? They go away. Now, one of the things I want to do is go back 10, 15 years and look and see at all of the recommendations that the Sunset Advisory Commission has been done and see how many of them have actually been written into law. Because the bottom line is that government at the state level, just the same as the federal government level, is a self-licking ice cream cone. They just continue to make more programs and more agencies. None of this stuff ever goes away. And you can see how the budget of the state of Texas has continued to increase, which means what? Your property taxes increase. So if you don't take care of the spending issue, it's not about the revenue, it's the spending. And so I think that one of the other things we need to do is right-size the state government, which provides you the immediate tax relief once again, if we get spending under control. How many folks here understand the difference between a baseline budget system and a zero-based budget system? See, government does what is called a baseline budget system. And as a member of Congress, I learned this, that every year when they go in a budget cycle, they start off of a baseline, the baseline of the previous budget cycle. And what do they do from that baseline? That's where they increase the spending from. They never cut spending. They may cut the rate of the increase, but they never cut spending. All of y'all that's been in the military, what did they tell us at the end of every fiscal year? Spend the money. Why do you spend the money in government? So that you can justify getting more money. They never say, where's the waste and abuse that we can return back to the taxpayer? That's what I want to do. But here's the real thing that we must do. We've got to transition away from the property tax system that we have. And this is why I tell people, how did we tax individuals in the United States of America prior to 1917 when we created the personal income tax? How did we do it? Consumption-based tax. We call that the fair tax today. So what I want to do is lock some really smart economists, because I ain't really smart, I just jump out of airplanes, lock some really smart economists in a room and say, develop a consumption-based tax system for the state of Texas, because we've got to replace the revenues if we're going to do something different from the property tax system. But the main goal is every single one of you need to be able to own your home. Right now, you can't own your home. You can pay off your land, pay off your mortgage, you don't own your home. And to me, that's a violation of the basic dream that you have, is to be able to say that this is my property, this is my house. So those are the points. First and foremost, codifying the law, budget savings to pay down the maintenance and operation. Look at the spending of the state government to, again, provide that true property tax relief. But we got to transition away from the property tax system, and I think we should go to a consumption-based system, which is what we call the fair tax, and I want to get some very smart people. And then you got to vote on it. Because if we're going to do that, that's a constitutional amendment. That's not just West coming up and saying what it is. But first and foremost, we got to get it passed through the legislature so that we can get it onto a constitutional amendment election. Much the same. How many people here voted in the constitutional amendment elections? Okay, come on, tomorrow's it. Every single one of you need to vote. But that's what the plan is.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Radical, but the question I have, I stand with you on what you're saying. The problem I see, we're doing so much talking about doing something about it. What would we do to block the wars? I mean, I see these pictures on various news feeds media that shows thousands of people coming across the border. I
Yep.
doubt that one iota. But what do we do to stop it? I mean, I know we've got judges that are willing to kowtow to the Biden administration that just opens everything up. What can be done to quit talking and block this flow of tragedies and a lot of this tragedy, these children and they're used and they're pawns. I realize that, but what can be done to stop the flow?
Well, I think I just laid that out. If you don't put your Texas National Guard troops on that border as a deterrent, you're not stopping it. You put them on those infiltration routes. If you don't empower our law enforcement, especially our constitutional officers, that's what sheriffs are. They're there to uphold the law. That's why you vote for them. And you give them the ability, since the Border Patrol and ICE aren't doing it, to be able to deport individuals. But one of the key things you got to do is stop with the magnets. Stop telling people you come into the United States, you come into Texas illegally, this is what you're going to get. You don't get taxpayer-funded benefits. You don't get in-state tuition in Texas if you're here illegally. That's the message you have to send. All you have to do is stand on the law. We don't need new laws. We just need to have courageous leadership that enforces the laws that are already there. And send a message that you're not coming into this state illegally. We have a system. Now, if you want to talk about the legal immigration system, there are things we can do to streamline. It shouldn't take 8 to 9 years. But we don't want people to be jumping the fence and coming in the back door. We want people to respect our rule of law. This is a constitutional republic. And if we don't respect the boundaries, the borders, the sovereignty in this constitutional republic, then Katie barred the door. It's just a matter of time. And so 30 years ago, I'm in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Why was I in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm? I'm defending the borders of Kuwait. And now you're telling me that we can't defend our own borders here? That's insane. So that's what we have to do. You're right. You can lay out a plan, but a plan is just a piece of paper until you execute it. I will execute it. Yes, ma'am. Bring it up to your mouth to come, yeah.
I know Abbott has used Texas cards. So where are they if they're not?
I will tell you exactly what I saw when I went to the board. And you can go to our website, west4texas.com, and you can see what I saw. And I can show you the pictures when I finish here too. I saw National Guardsmen that were there, and let me give you the scenario. Roma, Texas, on the Rio Grande River. And the Rio Grande River in Roma, Texas is about waist deep. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, a guy yells out in Spanish, "I got X amount ready to cross." Now, the response should have been, "Stay your butt over there." But you know what happened? The National Guardsmen who were there with a couple of Humvees turned on their lights so that the coyotes could see exactly where to bring the illegals across. And I stood there with several other people. You can see this video. I stood there with several other people, and I saw wave upon wave. I mean, the coyotes bring them over on rafts. The National Guardsmen come up to the edge, and one of them caught my eye, so he pulled back. But he was about to assist them getting out of the raft so they could come into the state of Texas. They watched raft upon raft upon raft, bringing people over until all of those individuals were there. They collected them up on the shore, and if you listen to the video, you hear them coughing and hacking. No one's sticking them in the arm. And then they policed them up, and they walked them up the trail, up the high ground, into Roma, Texas, where there was a bus. They put them on the bus, and you never saw them again. That's what our guard is doing. That's not guarding our border. That's not protecting our sovereignty. They don't have the right rules of engagement, and they don't have the right mission, task, and purpose. That's got to change. No. The commander of the Texas Military Department, which means The Texas National Guard is made up of the Air Guard, the Army National Guard, and the Texas State Guard. The Texas Constitution lays it out. Article 4, Section 7. The governor is the commander. And one of those responsibilities for the governor of the state of Texas, as the commander of the Texas Military Department, repel invasions. You don't believe me? Google it right now. Look it up. Article 4, Section 7, Texas State Constitution. Why is it not being done? Someone else needs to be standing on the stage before you, and you need to ask them.
Well, we discussed earlier that my concern is loyalty, and as long as it's to Texas, then I'm fine with it. But I want to make sure, for everybody, that for the next 4 years, if you win governor, then I want you here fighting for what you're telling us on the stage.
Well, let me tell you a little biblical verse. Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all thy heart, lean not upon your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he will guide your path. Now, put that succinctly, this is what my mom and daddy taught me. If you're going to make plans in your life, you do it in pencil, because God's got an eraser. So all I can tell you right now is this, that I am seeking to be your governor, to be your servant, to make sure that we protect your safety and your security, the sovereignty of this state. Now, I may be driving back toward the airport and be in a fatal accident on Highway 59. If you know my story, you know what happened to me last Memorial Day weekend. When I'm on a motorcycle, and I've been riding motorcycles over 30 years, a car cuts me off, and I get struck from behind. I'm going 75 miles per hour on I-35. And God has a sense of humor. The accident happened in the city of West Texas. Can you just imagine what God was doing? But this, no one walks away from a motorcycle accident on an interstate highway at 75 miles per hour. So I don't know what God has in store for me. All I can do is tell you, on 31 July 1982, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I pray that I will get the opportunity to take an oath to the Texas State Constitution in January of 2023. And I will work tirelessly to make sure that I am your servant, and everything that I'm saying here, we will finish, because I know how important Texas is. The fight for America, like I said, ain't on Capitol Hill. People wanted me to run for Congress. Nah. People wanted me to run for Senate. Nah. I ran the state party chairman. People will say that's a lowly, unforgiving position. But you know what we did as state party chairman? We flipped the Rio Grande Valley. Zapata County had never been Republican in 100 years. Now it's Republican. The youngest city council member in the state of Texas is a Republican, 19 years of age, Roman Garcia in Kerrville, Texas. First time in 36 years. We have a Republican mayor in the Rio Grande Valley, Mayor Villalobos and McAllen. So in just that 1 year, that's what we did. And oh, by the way, the largest sanctuary city for life in the United States of America, Lubbock, Texas. Yeah. January of this year, I was out there walking with them in their March for Life. They got petition signatures. They got it on the ballot, and they voted that no Planned Parenthood clinic, no more murdering unborn babies in Lubbock, Texas. So that's my commitment. That's what I'll do for you, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Who did you work with? What groups?
What groups? Well, first and foremost, no Republican Party chairman had ever been in the Rio Grande Valley. So the first thing was just to show up, and people see you, and you find out who are the conservative people and the Republican groups, and you continue to go back down there. And all of a sudden, you talk to people just the same as I'm talking to you all here, and they realize that their principles and values are aligned with you. See, this is what I hate about Republicans. Republicans go around and talk about this word outreach. If y'all ever say the word outreach to me, I may shoot you. I will definitely break your arm, but I'm not going to be happy if you say outreach. So why do I hate the word outreach? Because outreach means, and Bill knows exactly what I'm talking about, as chairman there in Victoria County. Outreach means that you show up in Black History Month. You show up in Hispanic Heritage Month. You show up in Asian Pacific Islander Month. And then no one ever sees you in those communities again until 60 days before an election. And you try to convince people to vote for you. And they don't know you. But if you're constantly there, which is what a commander does, he's always constantly out there with the troops, talking with them, interacting with them, getting them to understand who he is, what he believes in. He leads from the front. When you do that, you connect with people, and guess what? They finally realize, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a progressive. I'm not a socialist. I believe in our Judeo-Christian faith heritage. I believe in better education and economic opportunities for myself and for my children. I believe in strong families. I believe in the free market economic system. I believe in individual responsibility and rights and freedoms and liberty. And that's how you win people.
Okay, on divorce. How are you going to do this? I mean, do you just write an executive?
No. There are certain things you can write an executive order for. There are other things that have to go through the legislative process. I can do an executive order that designates the cartels as a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization. I then have to work with the Attorney General to make sure that we understand what are the penalties. I then have to work with the comptroller to make sure that whatever monies that we are freezing and seizing as far as their assets, that goes into the right fund. But when you start talking about things, and as the commander of the Texas Military Department, yeah, I can deploy 5,000 to 7,000. But when you start talking about some of the other things, like making it a felony offense for a non-governmental organization, that's got to be codified in the law. When you start talking about making sure our constitutional officers, like our sheriffs, can be able to have the ability to deport, you have to codify it in the law. Why? You have to be able to protect them. So I'm not looking at ruling over you, which sadly, over the past year, mandates, edicts, orders, and decrees, that's what has happened in the state of Texas. No elected official has enumerated power to determine who or what is essential. But someone did. And look what happened to small businesses. Look what happened to your lives and livelihoods. So no, I understand the balance between the powers that an executive has as well as the powers of the legislature. Like I said, with the property tax reform, we can come up with a plan, but if we're going to transition away from property taxes, that has to go through the legislative body, and you all have to vote for it in a constitutional amendment election.
Colonel West, I want to start by thanking you for your service to the state.
And you too.
Continued service.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And you stood. And you sort of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. We all saw the closures, etc., and our churches shut down. So as governor of the great state of Texas, and we're dealing with this pandemic, if we get hit with another one, can you tell us how you would have handled things differently?
Absolutely. First and foremost, one of the reasons why you all need to go out and vote in this constitutional amendment election, which is tomorrow, is because one of the proposed amendments is that the state of Texas, the government, can never shut down churches again. I know that you have your freedom of religion and free exercise thereof, but still, you had that happen. And so that's why you need to go out and get involved in these constitutional amendment elections. Texas has how many people as a population? Anybody? Population of Texas? 29. 29 million people in the state of Texas. Last time I checked, how many reported cases of COVID did we have in the state of Texas? About 4,020,000 reported cases of COVID in the state of Texas. How many deaths attributed to COVID have we had in the state of Texas since they started tracking it last March or whatever? A little bit higher, 69. Under 70,000. So I want you to think about this. 29 million people in the state of Texas. 4,020,000 reported cases of COVID. And let's round it up. Let's say 70,000 sad, unfortunate deaths. And I could probably argue with you that there's a difference between dying with something and dying because of something. So chances are that number of 70,000 may be even lower. So what are we talking about here? We live every single day of our lives with viruses. We always have. And we're talking about something that really and truthfully, when you look at the numbers, you're talking about a 99.98% recovery rate, almost a 100% recovery rate. But yet we have destroyed lives, we have destroyed businesses. Think about the suicide, the domestic violence, the child violence that is going on because people panic. Who follows a leader in combat when they panic? My point. So what you do is you sit back and you get the facts. And you convey the facts to people. And you don't sit around and you allow people like a Dr. Fauci to be the ones that's dictating the narrative. Now, y'all saying, okay, Colonel, that's all fine and well. Let me give you my personal experience. I just had my little fight with Mr. COVID, Wuhan, 2 weeks ago or so. And guess what we did, my wife and I? We studied, we researched, and we figured out what treatments, what protocols, what therapies we should be looking at getting for ourselves, for our bodies. We made that decision. Monoclonal antibody infusion therapy. We had that done. Now, she was okay, but I had some traces of pneumonia, so I had to go to the hospital. And thank you for your thoughts and your prayers. A lot of people, it was like, oh man, they're going to kill the colonel in the hospital. They're going to inject the colonel up with some bad juju. That's it. You know, colonel's gone. Yeah, but see, the colonel called some doctors as I'm in the back of that ambulance heading over to Medical City in Plano. I said, what do I need to make sure they don't give me, and what should I ask them to give me? So when the doctor walked into the hospital room on that college football Saturday when Texas A&M beat Alabama, I think that's the reason why I recovered so quickly, because the Aggies beat Alabama, because we all hate Nick Saban. But anyhow, the doctor comes in and says, well, you know, normal treatment, we're going to give you remdesivir. Way wrong answer, doc. That dog don't hunt. I'll walk out of here if you try to stick me with some remdesivir. He said, well, that's not what we'll do. I don't care. This is what you're going to do. I want budesonide nebulizer treatments. I want to make sure that these type of steroid treatments. I want you to start giving me some zinc. I want you to give me some D3. I want you to give me some calcium. I said, otherwise I'm out of here. And that's what they did. And in 48 hours, I was out of that hospital. And to the chagrin of my campaign manager, Lisa, who's sitting back there, the day after I was released from the hospital, I went for a 1.5 mile run. Because, you know, my lungs were still, I had to get my oxygen levels back up. But by that Saturday and Sunday, I did 5 miles. We have to make the choices and decisions. And what is happening with this Wuhan coronavirus thing is the age-old adage in politics. Follow the money. There are protocols and treatments and therapies out there that you should be making the decisions that you want for yourself. And one of the things that I promise to you, we're going to clean house in the Texas Medical Department, the Texas Nursing Board, and the Texas Pharmacy Board. Because no one should be getting in the way. No one should be getting in the way of the relationship between a patient and their doctor. If a doctor wants to prescribe X to you and it's approved, then no bureaucrat should say, you can't do that. So we're going to change that here in the state of Texas. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Allen West, for showing up in Edna, Texas.
Yes, ma'am. My pleasure.
So I'm a mom of 3. I have my daughter sitting right here, and I have 2 older sons.
She's like, don't embarrass me. Don't be pointing me out.
And I have a son who is a graduated Aggie, and one that's there now. And through the university and the public school system, I have watched the propaganda machine of the CDC, the coercion techniques, the mandates of testing with our young people at Texas A&M. And now I'm dealing with a school district that is also, the CDC, we all know, has some credibility issues.
Huge.
Yeah. And these agencies are being weaponized against our children. And so much so that our school board, our superintendent, is saying that they are working within the confines of the law when we challenge these mandates.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there. You said a contradictory thing. You said that they're working within the law when you challenge these mandates. See, that's a basic lesson of civics, folks. Mandates ain't law. Mandates, executive orders, and all these things, that's how an executive in the executive branch manages the operations within the executive branch. Laws go through the legislative process. And so we have got to go back and start remembering when we used to sit down on Saturday morning watching ABC, eating our Frosted Flakes and Rice Krispies, watching Schoolhouse Rock. Because Schoolhouse Rock taught us how you made law. And we've forgotten that. And so these things that they're doing, this is not law. You can choose to comply if you want, but we have got to have the freedom over fear. We have got to have the courage to stand up and start challenging these things, especially when it comes to our kids. We're doing more harm and detriment to our children right now. And now they're talking about, well, little kids, elementary school, got to get a jab in the arm. 0.024%. That's the rate of effect for our kids from COVID. You know what that equals? The normal seasonal flu. Knowledge is power. And I think it says in the Bible, my people suffer for lack of knowledge. And that's why when you come together like this, Chairman, we got to empower people. We got to inform people, we got to educate people so that you can be activated to go out there on this ideological battlefield. But you're doing the right thing and standing up and challenging these school boards. Now, the other thing is that the most important elected position in the United States of America is what? The school board. It ain't president, it ain't senator, it ain't governor, it's school board. Now you're starting to understand why. But the election that has the least amount of voter participation in the United States of America, and this is what you get. And what does the left do when they come into red states? They run for two offices, city council and school boards. The level of government that is the closest to you and is the most impactful because it reaches into your home. So here's my challenge. I want you to find these school board members. I want you to flip that school board. If you want to know how to do it, look at what they did in South Lake, Texas. That's the standard. I also want you to run for, take it away. I also want you to run for city council. But this is what I will do as governor. If we get these crazy school board, ISDs that are starting this kind of mess, we cut their funding. That's the message we're going to send. And when you talk about colleges and universities, we're not going to have these progressive socialist leftists that we're going to put on boards of regents so that they can continue to perpetuate these indoctrination factories on our college and university campuses and producing the next generation of little socialists and little Marxists. And we're going to cut funding to these colleges and universities. That's what I can do at my level, is to put the pressure, put the heat on them. But I need you all to join me in this fight at your level, to start going out there and winning back your school boards, winning back your city councils, and stop having these superintendents that are making these ungodly salaries and setting themselves up to be little feudal lords directing what happens with your children. You know, if you haven't been paying attention, there's a lot of elected officials that are saying they're not going to run for re-election. You know why? Because all of a sudden you have realized the power that you have. You're showing up at school board meetings. You're showing up at commission meetings, city council meetings. And you're challenging them. Because they have never felt that they had to be responsible and accountable to you. You got to keep that pressure up. You can't just do this and then do that.
One more question.
Yep.
What is your plan for school choice?
Get it passed. School choice is the #1 civil rights issue of today. School choice is about equality of opportunity, not equality of outcomes. And school choice is personal to me because my parents made that choice for me. I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. There were 2 public elementary schools in my neighborhood, C.W. Hill and John W. Pope. My parents said no, because they understood if their middle son, Alan, was to have all of the incredible blessings that America affords, they chose a small black Catholic school that was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. That's where I went. But you know what is the sad thing today? Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School does not exist anymore. So there will be kids in that neighborhood that will not have the same opportunities that I had to get a good quality education from 1st grade to 8th grade, which are the formative years of education for our children. If we don't stress the education of our children, then we're setting them up for failure. All right, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. West.
Good evening. Absolutely.
Yeah, my name is Montreal, long-time native of Victoria, Port Washington, we're all over the place. But first I want to say on behalf of everybody in the fellow Americans, thank you again.
Now, never thank me for doing what's right.
Well, true, those things, you know. But I wanted to share a couple things. Mine isn't necessarily a question as much as it is a statement. And something that I've read, I'm sure all have heard it, says the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. To quote normally and repeatedly attributed to Edna Purple, he didn't say that. Perfect, I'm not sure who said it. The point's still valid. It's good men and women doing nothing. So first, I want to apologize to everybody because I've been guilty myself of being complacent and letting things happen and being like it's going to be okay. But the reality of it is, for far too long, Christians, because I believe most of us here are Christians, have sat back and watched and have done nothing. You made a reference to Proverbs 3:5, one of my favorite passages, and that's been my passage since July 2006, when I had a significant turnaround in my Christian walk with Christ. And what God spoke to me, and what I'm speaking to all of you is this. God's word does say to trust in Him with all your heart, lean on your understanding, and all your ways acknowledge Him, He will direct your path. But it doesn't stop there. Once your path has been chosen, once your path has been visited and conveyed to you, it's now up to you to walk that path. And how do you walk that path? You get out and you vote. Get out and take action. You talk, and if you need to, yell at your constituents. You make your voices known to the people in your community, the people in your county, and the people in your state. And I believe with the leadership that has, in my heart, been ordained by Mr. West, that we can get there. Vanessa has been a long time friend. Me and her brother were in the Army together. And we sacrificed a lot of our time with our family, and we sacrificed a lot of our time because we both had a vision that we needed to do what we needed to do for our country. And I'm out of the Army, and that's fine, but I still want to do what's right for my country. And I said it before, and I said it again, and I commend all of you and encourage all of you to follow suit. Don't let the enemy tell you that you're too old. Don't let the enemy tell you that you can't. Because those are excuses and those are lies. Everybody has a voice. If you're still alive, you're still living, you can vote. I mean, if the Democratic committee can get dead people to vote, that's people sitting here alive to do the same. That's my comments. I just want to thank you.
No, my pleasure.
I'm sure all of us agree. Because some of you just hang up, some of you just step out, and some of you just start walking this path. And I'm here to champion you and to champion the rest of us. And to reach out to those people in our circle. Because the power of many are unstoppable. There's an old show that the cartoon, The Popular Ants. And I can't really make a cartoon. I saw something in social media, but it's a very good point. That as soon as we realize our power and unity, we
Let me share something with the audience here. How many people here have ever heard of the website or the organization My Faith Votes? One person. Two people. I want you, again, not tonight because your homework assignment is to read the entire Declaration of Independence, but tomorrow night, I want you to go to the website My Faith Votes. Jason Yates is the head of that organization. I used to be a national spokesperson. Here's the truth about Christians. In a presidential election cycle, 25 million Christians don't vote. When it comes to local level elections, that number jumps up to 65 million Christians. You go to church next Sunday, I guarantee you that 1 in 4 of the people that you talk to in your church, they ain't voting. They knew nothing about constitutional amendments this past Tuesday. And guess what the turnout was for the last constitutional amendment election in the state of Texas? About 8.2 to 8.3%. 8.2 to 8.3% in the state of Texas participated in the constitutional amendment elections. And one of those amendments in this election for constitutional amendments to the Texas State Constitution is keeping churches open, regardless of what is happening going on. Saying that no elected official can ever do that again. But how many of you all were in church this past Sunday and your pastor talked about that? Okay, there's a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Y'all go to the same church. Well, see, that ain't fair. Okay? So one church, all right? But I want you to think about that. Here is a constitutional amendment that says that Christians will never be told the church is closed. 20 years ago, the very first Sunday after 9/11, everybody wanted to go to church. And last year in March, the first thing the government shut down were churches. To the point where it even said that you could not sit in your car in the parking lot and listen to church services. If they did, they'd take down your license plate and they'd arrest you. It will be very interesting to see. It will be very interesting to see when you do the, after the crosstabs and everything, how many Christians came out and voted in this constitutional amendment election. And shame on us if that amendment fails and is not added to the state of Texas Constitution. So after you read the Declaration of Independence tonight, 5 people that you go to church with, call them and ask them have they voted on the constitutional amendments. And if you can get through that list of 5 real quick, then get another 5. But if we don't show up, and the next thing you know, we were reading on Wednesday that the constitutional amendment to make sure that churches could never be closed by any government official in the state of Texas, that fails. The shortest verse in the Bible, 2 words, Jesus wept. You will bring tears to Jesus' eyes. All right, last question, ma'am.
Hello, Colonel.
Hello.
The reason I wanted to talk is that the other day I heard Senator Colforce speak about how important it is for us to reach out and realize that the Hispanic population is really going to be important in all of our elections.
Yeah.
And the reason it really resonated with me because she talked about the fact that they are us.
Yeah.
They are pro-family, pro-God, pro-business. They are what we are about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important because I think there's been a bit of a wedge in there because we talk about illegals, and for some reason, some, not all, they were talking about them. Well, they're legal.
Yeah.
Now, I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah.
We got 140 countries coming across. And so what are you doing to work with the Hispanic.
It's what I already have done. It's what I already done. I did exactly that as the chairman, to talk about those issues. Do you know which demographic in the United States of America has the most Medal of Honor recipients? Hispanic community. They have the most Medal of Honor recipients. And when you tell them that, some of them know, and they're very proud of that. But they love this country. They're willing to fight for this country. They're willing to make that last full measure of devotion for this country. And the people of Hispanic descent along those border counties, they don't want open borders. They'll tell you that. They don't want the police defunded. They'll tell you that. You know why the left is freaking out right now in the state of Texas? Because Joe Biden has a 32% approval rating with Hispanics in Texas. We got a great opportunity for us to connect with people on principles and values. Don't go talking to people about party. Talk to them about shared principles and values. The greatest example of conservatism in the state of Texas across the United States of America is on Sunday. When you go into church, and we're talking about blacks and Hispanics, when you go into church, it's all about individual salvation. No one can come together and collectively pray each other into heaven. But something happens Monday through Saturday because they all of a sudden buy into this collectivism. I need you all to be out there, boots on the ground, to get people to understand the things that you say, the things that you believe, preachers, the things that you're preaching on Sunday, it's got to translate Monday through Saturday. They're starting to wake up. They're starting to get it. But you know what? If we don't have that engagement, not outreach, engagement with them, then we lose them. Let me close on this point. And this is something that I share with a lot of folks wherever I go out and speak, because this is so important. The Book of Esther talks about being made for a time such as this. None of you should think it's coincidence that you're alive in this moment. Just the same as the founding fathers were alive in their moment. Just the same as that greatest generation like my dad and maybe some of your dads and granddads. They were alive in that moment of World War II. So we all have that one opportunity in our lives to make a difference. Because the story of America, the story of Texas, is ordinary people, Judge, that do extraordinary things. And when I think about the person that made it possible for a kid like me, born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, in a blacks-only hospital, to be standing before you, it was a person, they had a routine. They did the same thing every single day. No one knew who this person was. No one probably would have ever known who this person was, except for one day in her life, she decided that she was going to do something extraordinary. That woman's name is Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks had been getting on that exact same bus most of her life. But on that one single day, she decided, I'm not going to the back. I'm going to sit right here in the front of this bus because that's my right. Rosa Parks decided that I will have freedom over fear. Regardless of the consequences, regardless of the ramifications. Rosa Parks knew that God does not call the equipped. He equips those that he calls. And she answered that call. You must now answer the call. You must now step out of your routine and find your courage to do that extraordinary thing. Because what Rosa Parks did meant that the kid born in a blacks-only hospital, because she started a movement, could stand before you here all in the great state of Texas and potentially be the first ever black Republican elected to be a governor in the history of the United States of America. I'm not into identity politics, but that's just the truth. And think if that happens in Texas. What does that say to the young black kids in Dallas, in Houston, the young Hispanic kids in the Rio Grande Valley? What message does that send? It tells them that they don't have to be a victim. They can be a victor. But it only happens if every single one of y'all realize that you got to find your Rosa Parks moment. In life, two most important days. The day that you're born, 7 February 1961, and the day that you find out why. God bless you all and thank you. Have a great night. No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Wish we'd had a better crowd, but everybody paid
Look,
attention.
God said 2 or more.
Yes, sir.
You beat that.
Yes,
That's
sir.
all that matters.
I hear you.
Fantastic.
And he recorded. Yeah, good. Who's done that?
Is that going to be posted somewhere with your video? Well, somebody else was asking. Where are they going to post it?
Send it to me. I have